really the way that we see homes is the way we see life. You get to choose how you create your life, what you do with it. Whether you have a small amount of resources or a large amount of resources, the idea is you need to be intentional in your living. We are co-creators with God in what it is we want to create. And that's how life is. So why are we not living our lives the same way? When you start with a home, you're starting with creating a floor plan, an elevational drawing, a working set of plans. And then you're on the design side, you're choosing all of your exterior elements, roofing materials, your exterior wall materials, the windows. Life is the same way. It's multifaceted. In terms of our family, we're always looking for where are we off balance? What is missing or what looks off? And when we look at it from that standpoint, you're going to create a life of balance and beauty, just like when I do interior design. As much as you and I love to build these beautiful homes, our heart has always been about what's in that home, what is being created in that home. So we are here doing something we never thought we'd be doing, right? You just mentioned that. So how do you feel about this?
Yeah. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, if you would have said that I would be doing a podcast, I would have been like, what is that?
Yeah, I don't even think I knew what a podcast was back then, to be honest with you.
No.
So how do you feel about it today? Are you a little anxious, a little nervous?
It's kind of different.
It is, right? Well, I'm excited to be here. So do you want to tell our viewers and our listeners a little bit about what we are and who we are and maybe the title of our podcast?
Designly Done.
Okay.
Is the name that you've come up with.
I came up with?
Both of us that
right?
we came up with.
Do you remember the day we came up with that name?
Not really.
You don't? Do you remember when we were driving in Springville Canyon and we drove, was it Springville Canyon? And we got to the point where the leaves were turning color and it was autumn. It was fall. And we were talking about if we were to do something in the future, what would we name it? And we came up with the name Designly Done, and it stuck right then and there.
Yeah.
It was probably 3 years ago, but we didn't know what we were going to use it for. We just knew that it was going to be for something. And so here we are.
That's
it's a
true.
podcast.
Yes.
So yeah, it's exciting. So tell me a little bit about why we're doing this. Maybe I would love to hear your viewpoint because I know my feelings around it, and I know we've discussed it. But what is our intent and our purpose for doing this podcast?
So I think just being married for 22 years now and all going throughout the years, the things that we've learned with our family and business and relationship and day-to-day life and just all of the challenges that are out there for families, especially today and with what's going on in the world and all the distractions and social media and trying to keep a relationship and a family together and have a business at the same time and try and juggle all these balls all at once and have a happy life and with your family and your spouse. And I think that that's probably
why we're here
and kind of what we've done to navigate all of that. And
would you say it's been an easy process for us, or do you think it's
nothing's easy.
Nothing's ever easy, right?
Yeah.
If there's a family out there who's had it easy or thinks they do,
they're not seeing everything.
They're not seeing everything. I love that.
Yeah,
I love that. Sure.
Yeah. And if there is, we've had friends in the past that they make it sound like it is, and then all of a sudden it's like within a matter of like months or years, and you're like, oh, there it is.
Right.
And it comes out.
So that segues us into why we named it Designly Done. So I think that you and I, our background is that we are custom home builders for luxury custom homes. And I do the design. You are
interior design.
Yeah. And you're in charge of building the homes. But I think that as much as we love creating beautiful spaces and beautiful homes for people to live in, I think that you and I have really created an emphasis in our own lives on what's within a home and what's there within the home and how important it is to create strong relationships, healthy children. And it's not come easy. I think that it's come through a series of ways that we didn't even expect. But that's where this word designly done is a play off of the word divinely done.
Yeah, I think the thought that's coming right now that we need to talk about real quick, though, is the last house that we built. We've been building homes in Arizona since 2023.
A long time.
24 is when we moved down here from Utah.
So you worked for somebody,
Yeah,
and then you
I
kind of
worked for a
segued
production
into
builder back then. So subdivision, track building.
You've done it all.
We were doing about 30 homes a month back then during the boom. And then, but it just seemed like all of those houses were just no intention about like room sizes and like the way that the house, it was like you'd be done with it and you're like, well, what are you going to do with this room? And it just kind of, there's just
simple, boring,
they're
no
simple,
intention.
And for the most part, production builders, they just kind of throw stuff up. And then when you buy the house, it's like, okay, I got to, use these rooms now that it's here.
And typically they're just filling kids in them, but there's not a whole lot of like intention
there's
or
no
flow
purpose.
or not a whole lot of purpose. Like we're sleeping here.
So and then when we built our first custom home, it was like, okay, it was a play off of some other semi-customs that we'd done, but not so much.
Boosted them a little.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it wasn't, the rooms weren't designed, the flow of it wasn't designed for intentional living. And then the last house that we built, it was, I think, really eye-opening to watch you design the house.
Yeah, I think we've done
with intention.
Totally. I would say we're doing homes, and to be fair, those homes typically come with more square footage.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we're creating homes with more flow, more purpose, more gathering spaces. And
I think it kind of started when we were up at the Parade of Homes in Utah, like 5 years ago or maybe, and we kind of walked through these houses and it was like, oh, another TV space, another, what are you going to do with this? And all of the bedrooms had TVs in them. And I think that's when you first started looking at, hey, I don't want my children in their bedrooms watching TV or off in some corner. So let's do this with like an intention.
Yeah. So if I'm hearing you correctly, you've noticed through our progression that we've seen homes that are small starter homes starting around 1,100 square feet all the way to these massive homes that are sometimes up to 15,000, 20,000 square feet.
Yeah.
And irregardless of the size, a home needs to have intention, and you can create within your home. And I think I've even seen people who have smaller homes do a beautiful job creating these spaces in their homes. I've seen designers, Instagrammers who will come in and they'll take their small house and customize it and make it special and unique.
I think,
and I love that. I love that they do that.
Yeah. And I think like on our last house, it was the conversations of you having like, I want to have my office right here when you walk in the front door, and my children.
I want to be present.
Yes. I want to be present. And we have a piano that we got from my grandmother that's been in the family for quite some time. And then our kids were taking guitar lessons at the time. And I want to be able to sit in my office, and I want to be able to look across the way and see them in the music room. And I want to be able to see them doing homework, and I want to be a part of, their life.
Right. So going back to Designly Done, really the way that we see homes is the way we see life. Like you get to choose how you create your life, what you do with it. So your resources, whether you have a small amount of resources or a large amount of resources, the idea is you need to be intentional in your living. But not only that, I would say that you and I, over time and through processes and through learning, we've had to really tune in together and get answers together to figure out like what helps us to heal. What are we supposed to be doing? What gets us on our path? How do we heal our minds and our bodies and our spirits when we're facing a lot of the heaviness in the world or even life problems that pop up for us? And so Designly Done is that play off of Divinely Done. Like we are co-creators with God in what it is we want to create. And as much as you and I love to build these beautiful homes, I think our heart has always been about what's in that home, what is being created in that home.
Yeah, exactly.
In terms of like your family.
Yeah. And I think even with our clients, that's one thing that we've tried to talk to them about is like, okay, look, let's talk about what is going on inside your family.
Yeah.
And let's build this with intention.
Yeah.
And what are you going to use it for? And how is it going to lay out as far as like, what are some of the things that your family likes to do together and with an intention? And
And that's how life is. So why are we not living our lives the same way?
yes,
You design a home and it's layered. There's so many, and you and I know this. When you start with a home, you're starting with creating a floor plan and then an elevational drawing and then a working set of plans. And then you on the design side, you're choosing all of your exterior elements. So that's your roofing materials, your exterior wall materials, the windows, and it goes on into the inside of the house, your flooring, your appliances, your tile, your lighting, all of that. I mean, it goes on and on. You know, from building homes as well as I do, there's thousands and thousands of decisions. Well, life is the same way. It's multifaceted. There's not just one thing that you're doing in life. And I think that you and I, in terms of our family and in what we've created, we're always looking for where are we off balance or what is missing? Because when you address, or what is not properly placed or what looks off. And when we look at it from that standpoint, you're going to create a life of balance and beauty, just like when I do interior design. It's where are we off or what are we missing or what do we need to add?
Yeah. And I think that's a conversation that we've had with our kids quite a bit as far as like and we use the scenario of a farm because that's the best way to describe it is if you were a farmer and you had animals and agriculture and you had different types of vegetables and trees and all those types of things. And you have to like take care of everything collectively. And if you just spent most of your time on watering the apple orchard and you neglected the vegetables and the alfalfa and everything else, it would just die.
Yeah.
And so we've had that conversation numerous times with our kids about, hey, where are you off in your life? And are you watering everything and taking care of everything?
And I think that goes back to what you were saying. Like so many people, like even if they think life is perfect or it's great, there's oftentimes things or fields that people may not be paying attention to or not aware of that they need to take care of or tend to and water. And eventually it will catch up to them. And so that's why we have Designly Done. It's really to be here to help our listeners and our viewers learn so much of what we learned, because you and I know that we're constantly juggling a lot of things with our business, working together, keeping our marriage healthy, being in balance with our children, making sure that we're helping them and guiding them. And then it goes on and on and on from there. There's so much that I don't think I was aware. I think I was a little bit naive going into marriage and probably the first 12 years of our marriage. I was naive to how much needed to be in balance. And I think that life then spiraled us out, it spiraled out of control. And so I want to ask you to kind of share with, I would like to ask you to share what you saw in our lives happen in our earlier years with health, maybe with our marriage, with children, and our parenting and how they were responding. I mean, that's kind of a loaded question because there's a lot. But tell me where we were at when we finally had to start making some changes, like something had to shift.
So yeah, that's a really good question. I think the best way to answer this is the way that I was raised. I was around my grandparents a lot. And so I saw kind of that generation, the guys like would come home from work and they wouldn't do a whole lot.
Yeah.
And so it was up to my grandmothers to cook, clean.
And you had an amazing grandma that you...
Yeah, exactly. And so
and two amazing grandmas, actually.
So I kind of saw that and I was like, oh, well, the guy's role is to, kind of just...
And you know what? You need to probably mention that you didn't have a dad.
Yes. And
so you didn't have a dad.
So I was watching my grandfathers assume that role.
And they were more of an older generation.
And they were like the World War II generation, the Great Depression generation. And so back then it was like, it was more of the woman kind of took over the role of the children and the nurturing and all that kind of stuff. And
the balance of the home.
So yeah. And so I think like early on in our marriage, it was like, especially when we first were having kids is, I was spending a lot of time outside of the house, like on weekends and stuff, like golfing. Yeah. And I've had that conversation with numerous people over the past.
Not that they're bad things.
No, and that's not.
It's not that it's bad.
But the conversation I was having with somebody just this past week was with golf, when we were up in Utah last week, was how many hours it took, and I was working all week, and then I would come home, and then on the weekends when we had small children, and it was like I was taking off on Saturday, and then you're gone half the day or more. And I think that really honestly, our marriage was getting out of balance, and that's where those seeds of resentment can be sown, with.
Well, and I think too, like my, over the years and years and years of giving and going and doing, and I think we had a lot of things that we hadn't impacted at that point in our life. So we were not aware of things that were really having an impact on our life. So it wasn't just that. I think that and like from what I'm hearing, like just those little things kept enough of a disconnect for us to not start to piece together what the problems were.
Exactly. And I think that's one of those things where when you're first married and you're coming together, you're raised completely different, from your spouse. And so then all of a sudden it's like the habits start to come out, and you're like, oh, wow, okay, I didn't see that with my parents, and I didn't see that with my parents. And so now you're learning to live together, and those types of things, some of them kind of annoy each other, and unless you actually start to kind of like talk and discuss those issues that you have, then you're not going to get on the same page. And so, and we had an employee that worked for us a few years back, and he would always use this analogy of like driving the bus. And he's like, hey, look, I don't need another person in the back of the bus, and it's the same thing with a relationship where the wife who's driving the bus doesn't need her husband in the back seat with the children.
Yeah. You got to be like, you got to kind of take turns driving the bus.
Exactly. And you got to be up
or kind of like driver students where there's double wheels. It's like a double wheeled bus.
Yeah.
Like you both have to be engaged.
You need your spouse up front driving the bus, and she doesn't need you in the back, or she doesn't need you, like as another kid, like on video games 24/7 with the kids. And then she's running everything, and
football games, basketball games, baseball games.
Exactly.
Like there's a balance. Like it's not, and I think that we want to be clear, like it comes with a balance. And that's what we figured out. And would you say, and I would say looking back on everything, I think when I realized that we really needed to make a shift was my health was down to my health was at an all-time low.
Yeah.
I felt like one of the things I noticed is I feel like we would argue about the kids a lot because I go into overprotecting the kids, and you go into over parenting and over like trying to set them straight and balance. So you were more reactive, where I was more like, they're fine.
Yeah. I think, you would make comments. And so then I would react and start
and then you
get
frustrated.
And yelling,
so we were out of balance with our kids.
Yeah.
I would say, our kids were dealing with traumas from life experiences. So they were already going through some traumas.
I think we weren't proactive enough. We were on the defense. And so once you let something go, it's like with your farm analogy again, it was full of weeds. Yeah. And so
they were fields we didn't even know how, but that's the key is we didn't even know those feeds needed to be cared for because we didn't have the education, or we didn't have the example set for us as to how to do that correctly.
Yeah. And I think that's the reason why I respect farmers so much, is because it's like a daily basis. Yeah. They have to go out and take care of their farm on a daily basis, and you watch for instance, like Ballerina Farms up in Utah, and
it's
the
constant
amount of work that they put in to feeding their cattle and taking care of their farm. And so it's one of those things where you have to be persistent in taking care of your family and your children and everything else. And you can't just put it on the shelf and then do all this other stuff and then come back to it and then not expect there to be weeds in your relationship and then with your children.
Yeah. I love that. I do think that I would say we absolutely hands down had a tough journey. Like we had some really hard things show up with my health. Caitlin had some health issues. Our kids had health issues. And I'm grateful. Like now looking back, I'm really grateful. And I think the reason why I'm so grateful is because it really taught me how to get down on my knees and how to really calm my brain. And at that point, when things were really pretty much at their low, we were struggling with I think, every aspect of our life. It was just trying to figure out business, trying to figure out our marriage, our children, my health, our kids' health. I feel like that was a pivotal moment in my life where I started to realize I got to figure out how to tune in. I got to figure out how to get some answers.
Well, and I think what needs to be said at this point is the majority of the world at that point, they tend to look at divorce.
Or that's when people get into addictions, escapism. Remember, we talked about escapism
we would talk
a
about
lot.
that, and like
alcohol, what are we using as escapism?
Yeah, a lot of people will use alcohol. It makes me laugh because we were building a house for somebody, and because the stress got so high, she was like, I've never drank this much, wine ever before, because she was escaping the
her
emotions.
First home build. In our defense, it's scary for first time home builders.
So you're right. And so a lot of times people they exhort to
overusage of television.
They zone out, social media, scrolling, mind numbing.
Yeah. Well, and the other form of escapism would be leaving the house. So men do this a lot.
Yeah.
They'll find their golf, their
mountain bike.
Yeah. But we found a good balance with it.
And so
we have found a really good balance.
So
with
I
it.
think going back to that, it's like you have a choice, and it's like, okay, look, I can take a look at all of the dirty laundry or whatever you want to call it, and the weeds or whatever,
right,
and we can fix this. And I think probably because we watched your parents go through a divorce the first year.
We're like, we don't want that. We do not want that.
I was like, I don't wish that on my worst enemy.
Yeah.
And so it's like, and on top of that, it does not make the grass greener on the other side.
It doesn't make the problems go away.
No, because
there's now a new set of problems.
Exactly.
Along with some of the old ones.
You're right. And you can divorce somebody, and then you go on to somebody else's baggage. And then it's kind of like, okay, we got the same problem over here on this side of the fence. And so it's like, okay, it's a whole lot easier to fix the main rooted problem and look in the mirror. And I think that's where the humility comes in, and you have to look at yourself and say, okay, we've got problems that we need to deal with, and they're not terrible, but they need to be fixed.
Yeah. And what's so interesting? I feel like through our education, and let me talk a little bit about that. It's when we started, when I started to learn to tune in and to start to calm my brain and get some answers, it was really interesting, because I remember one of the first thoughts I had was, you and your husband need to take a parenting class. And I remember at the time, I think I was more frustrated about money and wanting more money and feeling more security with money. And I remember, and my health. Those were the two things that were really at the forefront of my mind. And I remember that as I prayed, this was what was so weird. And this is kind of how God works. And I feel like I think the divine order in it for our life has been so beautiful. Was the first thoughts that came to me repetitively was, you guys need to take a parenting class. You need to take a parenting class. And so I remember finding, she was darling. We should have her here someday, because she was so good. She taught Love and Logic. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's interesting how that one little shift, it took some time when you're learning a parenting skill and you've done it a different way. It took some time to learn that. And it took some time to learn how to see things from a child's perspective. And then at the time I had health issues, and I had the thought to go see an herbalist. And pretty soon I was learning from the herbalist. And that was, acting upon a prompt, I would say a prompt, a mental prompt, mm-hmm. that intuition kicked in. And I learned some really difficult things from this person and some really amazing things, but they were both exactly what I needed. I think through and through, that person gave me exactly what I needed. And I'm glad now that I followed my intuition to connect with her and to do some healing with her and some learning. And I would say again and again, it was down to, remember when we both had the thought we needed to get a dog.
Yeah.
Do you remember that day? I was like, I've been having that thought too. And we got the dog. And I remember thinking within the first few weeks, what have we done? Yeah, she was so hard. I was losing my mind. Yeah. And I remember what I did was I went back into our room. I got really quiet. I think I even did like a yoga nidra meditation. And I got really still, and PetSmart kept coming to my mind again and again and again. And so I ended up calling PetSmart and asking, and remember we met Linda. And wasn't that awesome, because we went into the class, and how many times have we used the dog training lessons? for our children.
Yeah, because one thing that Linda talked about was the $100 bill.
Yeah, we always use $100 bill
so
now.
It was like, if you want your dog to like let go of something or
give them something the equivalent of a $100 bill.
Or you want a behavior to change, then you need to like give them what's the $100 bill.
Like what's going to make them really want to change it?
Why would Penny want to drop that ball?
Or that shoe. Yeah.
So you got to figure out what is the $100 bill.
Yeah. So like it was so cool because I think little by little by little, we were learning things because we were going off of that intuition. And we didn't use that for the first half of our marriage. It wasn't until life got so hard that suddenly we're like, this isn't working. Now, I think some people may naturally just come that way and may have been raised in environments with maybe less trauma or less pressures or a more knowledge than maybe what we had. But we were at a point where we were kind of in desperation. And as we started to calm down and we started to talk, things shifted. And we started healing generational patterns.
Yeah.
We started working hard.
Yeah. And I always remember there was an analogy that you would use all the time. And it was about like, you're off by a few degrees.
Yeah.
And there was a talk years ago that was given by one of the leaders of our church he was talking about in an airplane, and the pilots kept looking at this small little tiny light, and they got off course by a matter of a few degrees, and they ended up running into a mountain. And I think also that's one of the things that we talked about was we're off a few degrees. Okay, where do we need to course correct?
Right.
And we need to change this and change this because now we're too far off. So
tell me, okay, so I want you to share how often did we get into the practice? So how often are we checking in with each other?
Daily. Multiple times a day.
Which is awesome now.
Yeah.
Which is so cool. And has it not made life, it's kind of like, I like to use the analogy of like cleaning a house. If you're not constantly picking it up daily and picking up after yourself, it's going to get messy, right?
Yeah. And
so
I think it's also being aware of your partner and like, okay, you're in it together. And if it can't just be one person, and you mentioned earlier this morning about like, even with like Kelson, it's like our son who's 18 years old now, and how he's become more aware of more mindful of others around him. And, hey, I can help you with that, or I can, and so it's like, just, I think a lot of times, honestly, we're just ignorant.
Yeah.
And it's not like people are doing this on purpose.
No.
It's more or less like they're just ignorant because they're unaware of it, to where if you invite somebody, hey, can you help me with this? Oh yeah, sorry, but I think a lot of times couples, they get kind of resentful and they don't say anything. And I'll be honest with you, guys are not mind readers.
Yeah.
And guys are ignorant, and so the wife can be like, well, obviously, don't you think you should fix this? And they're like thinking about,
or we'll start slamming cupboards.
They're thinking about their golf game, or they're thinking about like, how did I get beat, or my next mountain bike ride, or like whatever it is. And so I think it's just, inviting. And I think that years ago, you started inviting me, hey, would you help me do this? Or would you help me do that?
And I would use the words, hey, I need you to be mindful of how I'm feeling right now.
Exactly. Yeah.
And we start talking about feelings. And I think that like in maybe the dude's world, like I think one of the things that kind of like where we kind of got off, I don't want to use the word lucky, where it was a blessing. And I hate saying this because it makes me so sad that your mom lost your dad at such a young age and that you didn't have a father. But I do think that you have had a special gift where you're very aware of females and women, probably because your mom was holding a lot of emotions when you were younger. Without knowing it, like you have a sensitivity to women and emotions. And so you were really good in those stages when we were at that like pinnacle of like, we've got to shift. You started calling me out. I need you to use your words. You're acting frustrated right now, but you're not telling me why. Yeah.
A lot of times we see that all the time where the wife will get, or for, in our case,
overwhelmed,
they get
exhausted,
quiet, and then they start to get like, they start slamming doors or kind of moving around fast, hoping to get their spouse's
To, like, jump up and
attention
do
to
it.
jump up and, oh my gosh.
We try to
she's
train them into fear rather than into.
And so,
yes.
And so
It's terrible.
communication, it's so much
Yeah.
easier with guys to just communicate and just be like, tell them exactly what you need,
Okay.
or, you've heard about honey-do lists or whatever it is. Some guys, whether it's like a list on a text, hey, can you please help me with the following? And then that way it's clear and concise and it's expected. And that's just opening the avenues of, communication. And you can start with text messages or lists on notes or whatever and send those. And then I think it materializes into communication, just verbal communication, where I can tell based upon your emotions and, okay, she probably needs more help, this time, this week or whatever. I can tell she's going through something. Hey, be aware of this. And I should probably step in and help a little bit more because I can tell that she's loaded or weighed down.
The problem though is, and this goes back to the things we've learned, sometimes men aren't mindful and sometimes there's going to be men that aren't going to be on board. So that's, I think, a huge part. And I think this is why it's so important. You're part of Designly Done. I think there was a time where I was like, no, I think I'll just handle it. But I think it's like you and I have worked so hard that you have so much insight and so much knowledge to help men maybe like humble themselves a little bit and to see their part in it. And I'm not saying that we're excusing women from any behaviors, but I think that you and I both know a relationship takes two. And, it was interesting. You and I just got back from Israel. We were there in Jerusalem for a couple weeks. And we just got back.
18 days.
Yeah, we just got back a month ago. And one of the things we noticed about everyone on that trip, because it was a tour, it was an alumni tour. I went to school there in 97. And so it was a bunch of alumni from the school I had attended. And one of the things that you and I both noticed was how incredible everybody on that trip was in terms of being mindful of one another. Did you, and you and I, we both would talk about it again and again, like how thoughtful and kind and loving and concerned, and people would step in to take care of one another. And it really, I think, resonated with you and I because that is something that we've worked so hard to teach our children and something that we've learned to work on in our marriage and something that we are learning about in terms of like even business and how to balance it. Like you don't want to be too overly giving, you want to have boundaries, but it's learning this, like being mindful and having intent in the way that you react with people in terms of doing it in a way that has a lot of integrity and can heal relationships and brings a lot of joy and happiness. And it does require sacrifice on everybody's part. It always will require people being mindful and being willing to sacrifice. But I do want to jump into, so those were our challenges and some of the things we've learned. We're going to go so much deeper into those. Like today is just kind of like a brief overview, but I want to go back to like some of the, something fun, I think, so people can kind of learn a little bit about you and I. How did we meet? I want you to tell everybody our love story because think about it. Like we were in love and then you get into life, things like got hard. We learned together. I would say our love has absolutely evolved and shifted into something more deep and meaningful, but the beginning of our story is very important as well. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, that's a really good question. We were living in Utah at the time. I'm originally from Utah, Provo, grew up there, and served a mission in California for a couple of years, and then came back to Utah. And we met at church at BYU, and I was speaking in sacrament meeting that day. And afterwards, you came up to me because I have a cousin, my dad's cousin's daughter, with the same last name. And,
right. And I happen to know who she was.
And you knew who she was.
And you thought I was flirting with you. You thought I was looking for a way to flirt. I was not.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that at that point.
Exactly. Yeah. And so anyway, she had asked me if I was her sibling, and so
because you guys do have similarities.
Yeah, skin
that
coloring.
Swiss line comes right through. Blue eyes,
hair,
light
blue
skin.
eyes.
Yep.
It looks a lot like Caitlin, our oldest, with blue hair and blonde eyes.
Blue hair.
Blue hair. Blonde hair and blue eyes.
All right, you got it right.
Yeah, and so after that, we lived next door to each other. You lived across the street from me, and we were in the same
like kitty corner.
Yeah, but that was a different stake, so it was like geographical
weird.
boundary.
So we were attending different churches based upon how our churches established boundaries and who goes where.
Exactly.
It's a thing. So we were like that close, and we met each other a couple times briefly.
Yeah.
Like we crossed paths.
Yeah, we'd gone to a campfire or something like that.
I was invited to go camping, and then because we couldn't figure out where to camp, I ended up bailing. I was like, I'm going home.
And
but
that
we would have really gotten to know each other probably that night, which we had both discussed would not have been good timing for either one of us.
The timing was wrong.
It was terrible.
And so a few years later, we ended up she moved next door, and then we ended up in the same ward. And
for anybody who doesn't know what a ward is,
it's
like a geographical.
It's a geographical boundary of like how many houses there are within a geographical boundary that all attend the same congregation at church is what it is.
Yes.
So anyway, we were going to this student ward at BYU in Provo and met there. And then in the student wards, everybody's single. And so they divide you up into family home evening groups, which is
every Monday night you get together and do a fun activity.
Yeah. And there's probably like 6 guys, 6 girls, maybe a
little more. I think it was like
So 10 and 10 maybe. So anyway, we ended up being in this family home evening group, and she was at the time going to esthetician school after she'd finished BYU. And so she was like, hey, yeah, I'll teach people how to do facials. And so I was like, oh, okay, well, you can come over to our house. And
he offered his house.
So anyway, she came over. And then at the time I was working for an internet service provider that my friend and I were running, and they needed internet. And so I was working up in Salt Lake at the time and had my friend hook up the internet at her apartment. Yeah. And so when she came home, it was hooked up. And then I think after that,
you called me on the way home and asked about it. And then it said, hey, do you want to go to dinner casually? Yeah. And I did go to dinner. But what was it that impressed you about that night, about me going to dinner?
You just got out of the shower and you didn't have any makeup on or something.
And my hair was wet.
And your hair was wet.
Like, I can't even believe I did that. Do you know what? At the time, I was 24, kind of old in terms of our church. No, really. And I think at that point, I was like, I don't even care anymore. Like, if I'm going to meet a guy and fall in love, he's going to just love me irregardless. Like, I kind of let go of needing to appear a certain way.
Yeah. And I think really, honestly, I was older too. I was like, was I 26?
You were 26. Oh, yes. You turned 27 right after we met.
And I think both of us were just so done with the dating scene in Provo that it was just.
But what was really unique about, I think, us meeting was, and I have explained this to people, it felt like, now at the time my parents were separated, but I knew what home felt like. Home is your safety net. It is your safe place. It should be.
Yeah.
Even your bedroom, like something that's peaceful and beautiful and stunning. And I feel like when we met, like it felt like I was home. I felt safe. And I felt.
Yeah. And I used that same description as well. Like when I walked into your room at your apartment, I was like, it felt like home and safe and just kind of like, oh, like familiar, like I'd been there. And it was just kind of like, oh, which, I mean, when you tell people, how do you know, to younger people, it's like, it's different.
Yeah.
It just feels more comfortable. Like it's familiar, and it's like.
And we were really lucky because you were traveling a lot for work at the time. Mm-hmm. And so we got to have a lot of phone conversations. So we talked about everything. And that first night we went out with the wet hair and the no makeup on, after dinner, we drove around, and it was so fun because you had grown up doing construction and building. My dad had been a home builder. And so we drove around looking at custom homes, eating an ice cream cone, talking about what we loved. And I think that there was that instant connection just of a love of something that was more than like almost a dream, like a hope, like a desire. And then it rolled into, our values, how we wanted to raise a family. And I think that, and it's ironic because then you get in and it's a different story because you realize I don't think I have a full set of skills. Like I really, the families that get it right in the beginning, I'm just blown away. I'm like, that's amazing. You already had those skills. But for us, it wasn't, but we had the basis. We had what we needed, which was good, healthy desires and an intention to work hard together and to love each other correctly. And so I can say that, like, even in the hard times, I remember just thinking, no, I knew this was right. And I felt this was right.
Yeah. And I think there's just the roles, like feminine and masculine roles in a relationship, and I'd seen more of my mom do everything because I didn't have a dad in the home, but
so she had to carry a lot of the masculine
and so
roles.
I think that know it was just more or less for us, kind of
find a balance,
defining those balances.
Yeah. And guess what? Now I work with you in our company, and I would say that was part of us finding that balance. I think at one point I felt strongly that I needed to come work and start working at the Ashtin Group with you and help you evolve it and develop it. And so it's been kind of fun to see how we have created some weights and balances in our marriage and in our lives that work for us. But it's going to be unique for everybody, and we're going to help people figure that out. So to close, what are your what kind of things? And I'm going to share too, just in case you've missed anything. What things are we going to discuss in the future? Like, what can you see us talking about? And what have we talked about discussing? So we've discussed family, children, marriage, but what are some other things that we, based upon what we've gained and learned through the years, you see us sharing here?
I think really honestly, if you can work with your spouse on a daily basis, then you can pretty much do anything.
Right.
Because it's like you hear some of these guys talk, about like, oh my gosh, I got to go home and I got to deal with this and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, well, it's not like that for me.
Okay. So what if they're stuck? What kind of tools or what kind of things have we gleaned over the years to help unstick people, to unstick family patterns, traits, to find to make an awareness in your mind of what you're doing so that you can make that shift?
Well, I think communication is the biggest thing.
Okay, but going back to tools, I feel like I'm trying to lead you into the answer. What if like right now, what are some tools you're using to shift in your life?
Are you talking about like foot zoning or like craniosacral therapy or herbs and
flower essences? Like you just took one yesterday, or the last 2 days, and did it work?
Yeah. So stuff like that, I think.
It's kind of a little bit of like I think for some people, a little woohoo, only because they don't understand it.
Yeah.
But it's amazing and it works.
But like foot zoning, Ashley and I go to this friend of ours, Natalie, that does foot zoning. And it's kind of funny because last week we were up floating the Provo River fly fishing, and the guide was like into like foot zoning. He's like, man, that really works. And so
and craniosacral therapy.
Yeah, he's like
this kid
I
knows
go to that
stuff
all the time, and so it's like
he was the cutest. I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing.
I think that a lot of times in the hustle and bustle of life, we just lack self-care, and
tools,
maintenance, and so then the problem is it's like you're running on empty, and how do you expect?
But also too, I think a lot of the tools that we use and the resources we use come with those intuitions, those gifts of intuition. So the facilitators, the people we work with, are very cognizant of the questions to ask us, and then our minds bring it up, and we start to process through those emotions and those feelings, and that's what we really did to heal our marriage. How many nights did I come forward and say, hey, I noticed a pattern here, and I think this came from your childhood. Did this happen in your childhood? And sure enough, it would come up, and then we would know how to reroute that.
Yeah.
And so there's so many tools out there that we can use and we want to share with people. And I think amazing people that have come into our lives to help us that we want to bring on.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that we've learned is moderation. And that's that really honestly, if you look at everything, you can't run you can't run a sprint forever. And I think in our lives, everybody's life,
balance and moderation.
Yeah. We live in a day with like internet, and everything is, if Amazon doesn't show up by tomorrow morning or today, we were talking about this last week with somebody, and if Amazon does not deliver today or first thing in the morning, or at least by tomorrow afternoon, that's late for Amazon.
Yeah.
Then what's going on? What's the problem? Because we live in this world of like, I expect it now, and it's like instantaneous gratification. And so with a relationship and with like expectations and everything,
and
I think,
healing
and what's that?
And having to do healing too.
Yeah. And having to do healing. It's like,
it's all
we can't keep up with that pace. And so we have to slow down and like look at the big situation
and take care of it all.
Exactly. From a macro level, and just look at it like, okay, I need to fix some of these things and get back on course and realign. And I think that, even like foot zoning, it's like, hey, what are some of the things that are causing problems right now
Yeah.
in your life, and what do we need to talk about,
Yeah.
and get that out and clear it.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think that you've been trained well. No, I'm so excited because we have so many tools. I think we have so many resources that we want to share with people. And I'm really excited. I think we're going to it's a journey. We have some great stories coming up. And I'm just so excited. So I know that this has been hard on you. I think coming into a podcast has been scary for you. And I think a little bit, I mean, for me as well. But when you really sit back, I think the one thing that has driven me and driven you to get to this point is knowing like, hey, we do have a story to tell and we have a lot to share. And so I think moving forward, we'll be sharing a lot about building a house, what it takes to build a house as a couple. So I think we want to do an emphasis on that for any of our viewers who are building a home and what that process looks like and what you can expect and how to deal with it being married. And we've seen, difficulties in home builds before with married couples. And I think we're going to dive into the world of healing with herbs and supplements, and also a world of healing the mental and emotional aspects of somebody's life through a whole plethora of tools. We have so many. It's not just foot zoning and cranial psychotherapy, but there's others. And I think also just parenting, how to have conversations with your children, how to be aware of them. Managing and balancing everything in your life. I think we also want to dive into creating beauty in your home and the importance of that, and creating beauty and how you present yourself to the world and why it's important to do so. And I think this podcast is about illuminating one's life. It's about people finding connection together and with God to get answers to help illuminate their life and to bring more joy into their life.
Yeah, I think that it creates a safe space. The thought I was just having right now is I think that's the reason why social media and online presence is so relevant right now. Relevant's not the right word. I think that's the reason why so many people go there, is because they feel like it's an escapism almost from reality.
From their realities. Because
from
beautiful
their reality
on that person's end.
Yeah, because then it's like I can check out and I can just kind of live.
And at least it's pretty for them.
I can live vicariously through, the people that I follow.
But we want people to get their lives.
And it's escapism, and they're not having to actually
take action in their own life.
Exactly. And that's what we had to do. And it's hard. And it's like, okay, let's do the hard work. And then, it's...
So
but it's like kicking the ball down the road forever and ever, and it's the inevitable.
And then before you know it, you're old, and you're like, "What was that? That was
why should I?" Yeah, and then finally, when we figure it out, we're like, "Wow, why didn't I do that a long time ago?"
Yeah, and life's so much better and happier, and that's our goal.
But the first step is the hardest part, and just to say, "Okay, I'm going to start here, and this is where I can start." And I think that the tools and the things that we've figured out, actually, they do work, and I think that's why we want to share these with people, so that we can help them to live a more fulfilled life and be happy.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you for showing up. I love you. I'm so grateful. Like, it's my best friend.
Well, I really didn't have a choice. So.
All right. Come on. Admit it. You're liking this.
No, it's not that bad.
It's not that bad. No. But I'm excited for the next episode. We're going to jump into trust and building trust and a trusting and what that looks like, because I would say that's the first step. But I'm excited to see where Designly Done goes. And I'm so grateful for you, because you're my partner and my best friend and my baby daddy. And I'm just so happy to be here with you and so grateful. So thanks for showing up, honey. I appreciate it.
Thanks.